There are 6 big scenarios that will completely drive the narrative coming out of the 2026 midterms, and they could fundamentally alter the 2028 race. There is so much early discussion of 2028, and some of that is fine. A lot of it, though, is just so early, because so much of what happens in 2028 is going to depend on what happens in 2026. As an example, let's rewind to 2018. The first midterm cycle under Trump. Part of what was so significant about that cycle was that it offered fuel for both progressive Democrats and moderate Democrats' arguments going into the 2020 primary. On the one hand, the results that year offered a ton of ammo for the more liberal, more progressive wing. Democrats won a huge national victory, the biggest popular vote margin for an out-of-power party in history. And the whole center of political gravity seemed to shift left. Democrats flipped seats that Republicans themselves had gerrymandered to be safe Republican seats. A new wave of Democratic socialists came to Congress. 2 years after the first female nominee for president lost, Democratic women won elections for Senate and governor in swing states. And then there were these broader victories for the left on culture. The first openly gay governor was elected. The first openly bisexual senator was elected. In a state that had voted for Republicans for decades, by the way. The first Muslim women were elected to Congress. First Native American women were elected to Congress. Women became the majority of a state legislature for the first time in history. And the House of Representatives got arguably its first ever pro-choice, pro-gay marriage majority. This was all a really big deal. A good encapsulation of how much this election shifted the rules was Lucy McBath, who flipped a House seat in Georgia that year. She is a solidly liberal black woman whose political career started by being a gun control activist. And she flipped a suburban House seat in the Deep South that had once been held by Newt Gingrich and had been won by Donald Trump just 2 years earlier. So together, the 2018 results really reset what a lot of people thought was possible in American politics. And that echoed into the 2020 primary cycle. Female, non-white, and non-straight candidates were major forces. And Democratic candidates of every identity felt both safe and compelled to embrace big progressive ideas like Medicare for all, the Green New Deal, decriminalizing border crossings, and even reparations. On the other hand, there were still some big disappointments for Democrats. They lost races for governor in Iowa, Ohio, Florida, and Georgia, most of which they had been leading in polls. And those last two, Florida and Georgia, were especially significant. Stacey Abrams and Andrew Gillum were the first black nominees for governor in their states, and they ran very different kinds of campaigns than the Democrats who had traditionally run there, pitching the idea that a more aggressive, more liberal approach could motivate new voters and change the electorate. They got a ton of national attention, raised a ton of money, were already being looked to as models for the future for Democrats, and then they both lost. That really set back the case that all of the rules had changed, and that Democrats could simply motivate new voters and expand the electorate. Democrats also lost Senate seats in North Dakota, Florida, Missouri, and Indiana. That not only blocked them from winning the Senate, but it became a real testament to how toxic the Democratic brand had become in many red states, and how popular Trump himself had become in big chunks of the country. All of that empowered moderates to argue that the Democratic Party couldn't just nominate anyone for president in 2020, that they had to be strategic about who they put up next. All of which is to say, those midterms did a ton to shape the 2020 primary dynamics. And again this year, there is a lot riding on the results. How they go will tell us a lot about the dynamics in 2028. And to me, there are 6 storylines that are the most consequential. Number 1, the outcome of progressive candidates in toss-up races. This is big. More than any time in the modern political era, Democrats are betting on progressive nominees in big toss-up races. That includes people like Troy Jackson for Senate in Maine and Abdul El-Sayed for Senate in Michigan. And that last one is especially crucial. El-Sayed is a big break from the kinds of candidates Democrats have run in purple states in the past. He has a long record of the kinds of positions, like defunding the police, that have been big problems for the left in the past. A victory by him would help prove that the electorate has moved on from 2020-era debates and is more open to the left than we thought. El-Sayed's candidacy is also part of a broader pattern this year. Democratic voters have chosen to run the more progressive candidates in major battleground House elections, like in Colorado, California, and Michigan, the exact elections that will decide the House majority. That's very different from recent cycles, when the party establishment basically had complete control in those kinds of districts. El-Sayed would be a huge victory for the left. The first time a truly Bernie Sanders-aligned candidate won a statewide race in a state that voted for Trump. On the other hand, a loss would be big. El-Sayed losing would basically forfeit Democratic control of the Senate and be a huge own goal. If either happens, you'll be able to see the I told you so sign from space. Number 2, the final popular vote margin. One thing that's kind of forgotten about 2018 is this. Democrats won the National House popular vote by 8.5 points. Like I said before, the biggest popular vote win for an out-of-power party in recorded history. That did a lot to help fuel Democrats' confidence against Trump. Their new House majority leaned into passing liberal policies. There really wasn't any hesitation about impeaching him when the time came, and it helped hide the political strength that Trump accumulated in 2019 and early 2020 before COVID hit. Where 2026 lands will have a big impact in 2 ways. First, there's the narrative. A smaller victory than 2018, after all of what has happened in Trump's way more aggressive, way more conservative second term, would be a huge disappointment, especially because Democrats have a bigger advantage in off-year elections now. It would also help add fuel for the case of more moderate Democrats in 2028. Then there's the substance. After the wave of redistricting and gerrymandering this year, the question now is not just who wins the House majority, but what kind of margin that party has. Republicans have had a very narrow majority since 2023, and it's caused them all sorts of problems. Especially now, with the wave of new progressive and Democratic Socialist members incoming, Democratic leadership will really want some breathing room, which probably requires a decisive popular vote victory. Number 3. The red state Democratic Senate candidates' outcome. Right now, for the first time in modern political history, there are 0 Democratic senators from solid red states. Now, of course, there's only 1 Republican senator from a solid blue state, Susan Collins, who very well may lose this year. But if you've seen past episodes of this show, you know this statistic already. 25 states with 50 Senate seats voted for Donald Trump 3 times in a row, whereas only 19 states with 38 Senate seats voted against him 3 times in a row. So Democrats need to break into red states to win a majority in a way Republicans simply do not need to do with blue states. Unfair, unequal, whatever, that's just the way it is. And this year should be their best shot to do that in years. They have high-quality, well-funded candidates in Ohio, Alaska, Texas, and Iowa, all of which voted for Trump 3 times in a row by high single digits or double digits. But getting close in a lot of states ultimately means nothing. If Democrats can't actually break through in any of these red states, it's going to echo for years. Because without any solid red states, their only pickup options this year are Collins' seat in Maine and an open seat in North Carolina. Those would only take Democrats to 49 seats. That's not only too short of the majority this year, but it would set up a really hard 2028 cycle. That year, only 1 Republican seat is up for grabs in a state that voted for Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, or Kamala Harris, Wisconsin. So if they don't pick up any red state seats this year, Democrats would have to run the table in 2028, holding every one of their own seats and picking up that seat, all just to get the barest possible majority of 50 seats. On the other hand, more moderate candidates delivering Democrats a Senate majority through red state pickups would be a huge validator for the Democratic establishment, which has not had a great track record recently. It could also help fuel moderate Democrats' argument in 2028 that they have the solution to the party's problems. And it could help save Chuck Schumer, who recruited all of these candidates, as Democrats' Senate leader. Number 4, the Latino vote. One of the most notable outcomes of the 2022 midterms, which again, a lot of people overlooked, was how much the Latino vote narrowed. That year, Democrats won the Latino vote by only 20 points, less than half the margin by which they won it in the 2018 midterms, and narrower even than Joe Biden, who underperformed among Latinos a lot in 2020. That was a big warning sign for the 2024 cycle, and it ultimately proved to be right. Trump's performance with Latino voters was the best for a Republican in the modern political era. This year, the Latino vote again matters a lot, both in the short term and the long term. Polls show Latinos are one of the groups Trump has lost the most ground among in his second term. Look at that. And where Latino voters land this year will have a big impact in some key races, like the Senate race in Texas, which has the 3rd highest population of Latinos in the country. There are also a couple Republican-held House seats that could become very vulnerable if Democrats can recover to even like 2016 levels among Latinos. Then there's the long term. Again, the 2022 cycle was a big warning sign of where the wind was blowing ahead of 2024. And a big Democratic comeback in this group can have all sorts of implications, including on how the Trump administration does immigration enforcement over the next 2 years. On the other hand, Republicans holding their ground or only losing a small or medium amount among Latinos could empower Trump and J.D. Vance to have a lot more confidence about the immigration issue from now until 2028. Number 5, the fates of women and non-white candidates in swing states. Ever since Hillary Clinton lost, Democrats have been consumed by questions of identity and electability. Can a non-white person win here? Can a woman win there? And remember, 2018 gave the party a mixed verdict. Enough victories that the 2020 cycle saw a lot of women and non-white candidates be taken seriously, and enough losses that there was still an underlying feeling that they had to nominate a white man. That whole conversation has only deepened after Harris's loss in 2024. So it's pretty significant that this year, Democrats are running women or non-white candidates for governor of 5 of the 6 states that flipped to Trump in 2024: Arizona, Nevada, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Georgia. All of them start off as at least even shots to win, and how they end up doing will have a huge impact. Imagine if Democrats go into the 2028 cycle with black or female governors in the exact swing states that Kamala Harris lost. That's going to factor into how candidates talk and pitch themselves. And if those candidates lose, it's going to do the same, just differently. Before we get to the last one on my list, do me a favor and scroll down. Hit subscribe to the channel and my weekly newsletter. It's free, it's easy, it's the best way to support. All right, and number 6 to watch this year, will it be a wave? Here's the thing. In previous political eras, it used to be pretty easy to categorize who won midterm elections. Between the end of World War II and 2010, more than 60 years, the House of Representatives flipped partisan control 6 times. In every one of those years, the Senate also flipped. All of Congress moved from one party to the other. Pretty clear who won. But since 2010, things have been way more muddled. The House has flipped 3 times, and all 3 of those times, the Senate has stayed with the other party. In fact, in the last 2 times, one party has flipped the House, while the other party picked up seats in the Senate. So the idea of a wave election is a bit complicated, and a lot of it comes down to arguing about imaginary points and made-up terms. So let's talk more concretely. To me, a successful Democratic midterm, an actual wave, would be breaking from that post-2010 pattern, getting over 230 House seats, and winning the Senate majority. It's become a theme on this channel, but that might look a lot like 2006, the last midterms under a second-term Republican president, and the last time the House and Senate flipped together. And that, to me, is both the marker and the biggest question of this year by far. Can Democrats do 2006 again? That's the bar. And if they can actually achieve that, it would have an impact that other wave years, including 2018, did not. For starters, it would probably grind Trump's agenda to a halt. With the possible exception of one wildcard from Pennsylvania, it is unlikely that a Democratic Senate would help Trump confirm cabinet picks or judges, let alone Supreme Court nominees. And a complete takeover of Congress would also provide the kind of national rebuke to an incumbent president that we have not seen in 2 decades. It would validate Democrats' argument that Trump really is in a different category of unpopularity and toxicity. And for 2028, it could potentially have a lot of downstream effects. It could very well embolden Democrats to be more progressive and more aggressive, much as the 2006 midterm results did, when they gave people like then Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid the confidence to nudge first-term Senator Barack Obama to run for president. Now, on the Republican side, it would probably create hell on earth for J.D. Vance. If Democrats win a wave victory and flip both chambers, there is going to be conversation among Republicans about whether it makes sense for them to run Trump's incumbent vice president. And from what we know about Trump, that's only going to make him demand Vance's loyalty and subservience even more, putting him in a potentially impossible situation for the next year. So that's my list. Did I miss anything? Which storylines will you be watching the most closely? Let me know in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe to the channel and my newsletter.